Hello everyone, and today we are not only going to look at the release date of the new episode, but also talk about absolutely all the leaks of the second episode that have been shown to us in the last month. Recently, a Tumblr user asked Gooseworx directly when we can expect the release of the second episode, and instead of some jokes, we got a very real answer. Sometime after Murder Drones is exactly what Gooseworx replied. And since today was the release of episode 7 of Drones, we can assume a few things. We all know that new episodes of Murder Drones were supposed to be released in March and May, and that means that we have to depend on when the creators decide to release the new episode. And if it will happen after the end of the first season of Drones, then unfortunately, we will not see the new episode before the second half of May. But there is a possibility that the second episode of Digital Circus will appear between the 7th and 8th episode of Drones, and in this case, we will be able to see the long-awaited second episode in the next 2 or 3 weeks. What do you think about that? Well, now let's talk about all the possible leaks related to the new episode. Like many of you, I think Kinger or Pomni are the main contenders for abstraction in the next episode, but this image casts doubt on that theory. We all remember the final scene of the pilot episode where absolutely all the characters were sitting around the dinner table doing their own thing, but in this picture, we don't see Zubal. Of course, you can argue that Gooseworx said that the third episode would be all about Zubal, but who is stopping them from changing the script a bit and dedicating the next episode to Zubal and adding someone new to the Digital Circus? And the first and one of the most recent leaks will be a picture of Pomni, Gangle, and Regatha. But the most interesting is the description of this leak. Look out Pomni, she's right behind you. That's what Gooseworx wanted to tell us, and after reading this post, I became really uncomfortable. I had the feeling that these words are not Gooseworx at all, but the character who looks directly at Pomni. And as you might guess, I'm talking about Regatha right now. Perhaps this is how our doll intended to warn Pomni of the impending danger. And judging by the face of Pomni at that moment, Regatha was able to do everything in time. The face of Pomni looks very strange. On the one hand, you can see she's very scared, but the other half of her face shows us surprise. It is as if Pomni does not understand what her friend wants to say to her and does not understand who to take a shit. And now we come to the main character of our leak. Gangle. It is this depressed girl who poses the main threat to Pomni. And if you think about the pilot episode, where Gangle looked sad all the time, this leak is the reverse. Gangle sneaks quietly to Pomni with a very intimidating look on his face. It seems that Gangle wants to hurt our main character. But why would she do that? The answer is hidden in the same pilot episode. Remember how brutally Jax bullied Gangle, and perhaps to get rid of this, Gangle had to turn to Kane for help. As we all know, Pomni was the main cause of Kane's stress in the pilot episode, and perhaps in exchange for her protection, Kane asked Gangle to make Pomni stop quietly living in a digital circus. And as we all know, the more stress a character experiences, the faster his final song gets. Or maybe Gangle just wanted to scare Pomni into some game without pursuing any malice. Also, I think many of you remember that image of Jax in a very intriguing outfit, and although initially it seemed to be just a funny image, one of the Tumblr users got curious about it and asked Gooseworx about it directly, in response to which our creator replied, "I can't disclose that," which could mean that this seemingly crazy picture is a reference to some new episode. And considering the fact that in the same post, Goose mentioned the third episode as the most anticipated one, I can confidently say that there is a huge possibility that this beautiful maid outfit could be worn by Jax in the third episode. And if we already talked about the third episode, let's remember Gooseworx's words about who it will be dedicated to. And I think all of you know who we're talking about. Of course, we're talking about Zubal, who we're going to talk about now. We all remember what Zubal looks like in the pilot episode, but few people paid attention to this leak. On the one hand, we see Jax and Zubal and nothing else unusual happens. But not only this picture is a reference for one of the most memorable scenes of the pilot episode, but it also shows what Zubal will look like in the second episode. And look how funny Jax moves in this moment. By the way, we were recently shown a very interesting concept of Jax's various actions, and I spent about an hour to compare them all with Jax's actions in the pilot episode, and I'll tell you that not a single similarity was found. But what does that tell us? Remember the very old leaked characters that fit the actions of the pilot episode perfectly. Don't you think that the second episode will be very much full of different scenes with Jax? That's why we see both a surprised and a scared Jax. I'm not even talking about that. Apparently Jax was very inspired by Pomni's behavior in the pilot episode. Remember how I mentioned that the details of Zubal in episode 2 will be different from what we saw in the pilot episode. And judging from the fact that Gooseworx stated that the best look of Zubal will be in the fourth episode, we can understand that each new episode will show us a new outfit of our mysterious Zubal. Also, let's remember the character introductions, where Zubal was changing parts on her body. But before that, she bent over somewhere, and then I wondered where Zubal gets the new parts from. And after a few hours of searching, I found an old concept which is completely dedicated to Zubal, and on this concept we can clearly see two completely different images of the same character. But the most interesting thing for us is this suitcase, where most likely all the Zubal parts are stored, and if we go back to the Tumblr post, I think it is in the 4th episode that we will see Zubal's face change. Let's talk a little bit about the new character of the new episode, Princess Luli, and judging by the fact that Gooseworx has stated that this character is her favorite among all the newcomers, it's safe to say that we will see a lot of scenes with her in the 2nd episode. But I am here to show you the hidden renders of this character, and they will blow your mind. Look how perfectly she is made and how many small but very important details we will be able to see on her. Let's just praise Gooseworx for such a great job. I think everyone remembers this funny scene from the 1st season announcement, but who knows that originally this scene looked like this, then this, and in the final version everyone has already seen it. The first and probably one of the most important spoilers today is this picture from Gooseworx's Twitter account, which shows already known characters, Jax, Kinger, and Ragatha. By the way, I told you a long time ago that Jax and Kinger will definitely take part in the Sweet Journey, because we can clearly see them on one of the very first spoilers we were shown in the trailer. And next to this spoiler we saw another image with a very surprised or scared Kinger, and as we can easily guess, the events take place in Candy Canyon Kingdom again. And just recently we were able to see the latest leaks of the new episode. And as it looks like, the main character of the 2nd episode will be Princess Luli. Let's take a look at each leak in chronological order and try to guess what really happened to her. The first leak lets us know right away that something happened to Princess Luli, because the picture Kane is holding is very similar to the one that hangs on various booths with the search for people. And by the way, I think a lot of people didn't notice the picture behind Kane, and it showed us what the lake with the yacht from the pilot episode will look like. Well, we also know that most of the events will take place in the digital circus tent and not in Candy Canyon Kingdom as many people thought. And judging by the fact that Princess Luli looks very friendly in this picture, we can easily understand that she will be a positive character. Although many suspected that she will be a kind of reference of Kane, and in fact all her actions will just be an imitation of goodness. But I think that's all nonsense because she looks very nice. And look at Kane even in the most ordinary situations. And based on the next leak, we understand exactly what happened to our sweet princess. The rope around Lulilalu's body is striking, and apparently she was tied up by the biggest bully in the digital circus universe and the guy lying next to her. To be honest, I'm not surprised that it was Jax. But why are they both down? That's a question that's really bothered me for a long time. Maybe Jax was trying to tie up our princess and failed. But we also have this leak that shows Jax trying to get the princess out of the digital circus tent, and I have a hunch that Jax didn't make the right turn at the right time and just crashed, leading to this so-called accident. And now for the fun part. We were shown a very interesting fragment that shows Kane, Princess Luli, and a blue mannequin. And from the looks of it, Kane is very scared, as if he realizes that he is in trouble in the near future. While Princess Luli makes it clear that they are about to have a very serious conversation. And also remember the very first leak of the blue mannequin where he was shown very scared. And here you can see how devoted they are to their princess and how ready they are to come to her aid at any moment. And another very interesting detail of this leak is the table, which is very similar to the already legendary table from the pilot episode. And the last leak refers us to the farewell scene of the pilot episode, where Pomni sat at the table with the rest of the characters. However, unlike Pomni, our Princess Luli has a very satisfied look on her face, and I think the hot dog Kane treated the princess with was incredibly tasty. It was probably a reconciliation dinner after which the whole situation that happened recently was forgotten. So, what happened next? I think that after everything that happened, Kane realized that it's impossible to forgive Jax anymore, because every day his behavior gets worse and worse. And maybe this situation was the reason why Kane sent our bully to work at fast food, where someone else would bully him. But that's another story, and that's the end of our video. Good luck to all of you, and goodbye.